Hi there everyone, my name is Goblin, and welcome to my build video for the CLAYMORC. This is a new channel, and this is my first video, so thank you for watching if you are watching this. And basically, I just want to talk briefly about what I want to do on this channel. This video and this build are going to kind of fit into a series that I want to do on certain builds that are viable but are not necessarily meta. So for this build I am doing a Stam DK, which is already a little bit off meta. You know, Magicka is certainly considered to be stronger these days, and DKs aren't necessarily even the first choice when it comes to Stam DPS. But I'm also using double two-hander on this build as opposed to the standard dual wield with a bow back bar. So I'm going to be doing lots of different builds that are a little bit more unique. There's a lot of build videos out there for things that are already meta, and I think that, you know, certain people definitely want to run something that's just a little bit more fun every once in a while, especially if you're not doing score pushing vet trials. So I think, yeah, that's kind of the niche that I'm going for, and this is my first example. So first of all, this is Skinny Orc. He's going to be demonstrating everything for us today. I'm on the PTS for, I believe, Stonethorn, but I'm not sure. Alright, so I'm going to get into the stats. Let me drop some of my potions. So I'm sitting at 3700 weapon damage. That goes up a lot. We have a lot of, we do have a weapon damage enchant infused on our back bar, so that's going to go up. And critical chance is at 50.7. That goes up when you hit the dummy as well. So all around that's pretty good. You'll notice that my health is pretty low. I am using a parsing food at the moment. That can go up if you choose to swap out some enchants for health or use a different food as well. And stamina recovery is stupidly high with the present food that I'm using. So there's no chance that we're going to run out there. Okay, so first thing I'm going to go over is the skills that I'm using and the passives that are important for those skills. So Stam DK, very based off of dots. They have two very strong dots in the Ardent Flame line, which is your primary DPS skill line for Dragonknight, and as well as the standard might ult is going to be our primary ult that we're using. So we're using Venomous Claw. This is a dot that ramps up over time and lasts 14 seconds. So with the rotation that I'll be showing you later, we make great use of this because we are always recasting it exactly as it runs out. So it's getting the maximum amount of damage with no downtime, which is great. And we have Noxious Breath, which is also a great dot, and it applies Major Breach, which is extremely good for 4-man content, where you might not always have a tank, especially if you're pugging. You might not always have a tank that is providing that for you. So this is really good. And then Standard of Might is a extremely strong ultimate. It increases our damage for the duration of the ult by 15%, which is huge. Next, we're going to be going into, on our back bar, Molten Armaments is in the Earthen Heart line, and this ability applies Major Brutality and Sorcery to our entire group. Again, really great for 4-man content, especially if you don't have someone else providing this for everyone, or if you don't know whether or not, you know, the other DPSs have this provided for themselves. Again, pugging, this is going to be really great. It does increase our heavy attack damage by 50%, but we actually don't ever heavy attack. It's just that the other version provides a longer duration, which we don't need with the rotation. Then we have, in the weapon skills, two-handed Stampede. Now, the reason we're using this is because our back bar weapon is going to be a Maelstroms two-handed, which buffs this ability, as well as this ability can proc our back bar enchant. with the ground AoE, and it applies a dot, and it critically strikes every time, so it actually does a quite good initial damage as well. So that's what we're using, and then we also have Consuming Trap. You can find that in the World Soul Magic Consuming Trap. This is just a solid dot, costs Magicka, so helps a little bit with our Stam Sustain. We don't have Stam Sustain issues with this build presently, at least for parsing the dummy, but this is a good dot. It does a lot of damage over time, and you know, if you're doing trash pulls and you put this on a a mini boss or an elite mob, and you can restore some stamina and magicka and health off of that when they die. Alright, on the front bar, we are going to be using Stone Giant. Now, Stone Giant is a very important skill. This is the entire rotation is built around this skill. So what this does is that it's a spammable ability. It does damage, but it applies stagger, which increases the damage that the enemy takes up to 3 stacks, and those stacks last 6 seconds. So during your rotation, this is the most important ability to keep track of. Everything else, if you drop it by accident or miss it, it's not a big deal. But this applies that damage debuff for everyone on your team. So this must be kept up. It is the most important skill in the entire rotation. And contributes the most to our damage, not necessarily by doing damage itself, but by buffing the damage of everything else we do. Next up, I will go over our two-handed skills. We have the Wrecking Blow Spammable. So this is a channeled ability, and it will do very high damage and grant us Empower, which means that when we are weaving this in the rotation, it provides a lot of damage. Our light attacks are actually going to be our highest damage output throughout the parse, partially because of this. And then we have Executioner. This is our Execute Spammable, and it scales up tremendously as we go into the Execute phase. Not to mention, it's a little bit quicker, so we can actually get this off a little bit more often than Wrecking Blow. Okay, next up we have Beast Trap. That is in the Fighters Guild skill line, and Beast Trap is going to provide us with Minor Force. We don't need this for the dot. The dot is good because it does, as you can see, 25k damage over the course of 18 seconds. But what we really want this for is the Minor Force, and we are able to keep this up 100% of the time with the rotation that we're going to be using. The other two skills on this bar are also Fighter Guild skills. So Ring of Preservation is going to be your heal, and it gives you minor protection. This, obviously, I do not cast this while I'm doing the parse, but in real content, having a heal, just in case, if you're getting low, instead of panicking and running away, and then you're out of the range of your healer and you die, you want to just stand in there, cast your own heal, trust that the healer will get you within a few seconds. But this will buy you a couple seconds where you can just stand in there, stay confident, keep putting out your damage. Flawless Dawnbreaker, we're running this on the front bar only for the passive. We never cast this. Although, in certain situations you could use this in specific pulls, AoE situations, or if you miss casting the Dragonknight standard on the back bar, you could fit this in on the front bar and use it. It's a perfectly fine ult, but the standard is going to do overall a lot more. Okay, I'm going to go over some of the important passives. We'll start with the Fighters Guild. The Banish the Wicked is very important. You're going to want that, but Slayer is your most important passive for Fighters Guild. As you notice, on our front bar, we have 3 Fighters Guild abilities, which means that our damage is going to go up by 9% on our front bar. So when we're hitting our spammables, they're going to be hitting extremely hard because we have so many Fighters Guild skills on the front bar. For our class passives, you're going to want all of the class passives regardless. But if you are still leveling up and you want to, you know, go over a couple that are the most important, combustion is going to be very important because we are using a lot of poison damage with these two abilities. Warmth is good as well, although we don't necessarily need that right away. Searing Heat is very important because it's going to increase the damage of the Dragonknight standard, the Fiery Breath, and the Searing Strike, which is all three abilities we are using in this build. And damage of the flame area of effect, that's going to be the Dragonknight standard. You're going to want that. And decreasing the cost of your poison abilities, so this and this, are going to have much decreased cost because of that. So the first one, very important. Second one, not as much. The last two, very important. Draconic Power, now this is the tanking tree. We're not using any of these skills, but none of these are based on the skills being on your bar. You just get them all the time. So increases your spell resistance, increases the range of your melee attacks. We are not going to get the health recovery bonus, but that's okay. We're DPS, we don't need that. We're getting healed anyways. Health recovery is not going to do much for us. This not going to happen, so you actually don't need these two. And Iron Skin is always good, you know, sometimes if you do need to block an attack, especially a heavy attack from an elite mob that maybe hasn't been taunted yet, or you know, escaped the tank's taunt. This is going to help you not go down to that instantly. Earthen Heart, we have Eternal Mountain. This is really good because it increases the duration of our Stone Giant and our Molten Armaments. Battle Roar is extremely important. When you cast an ultimate ability, you will regain stamina and health. So if you get in trouble, you could just cast an ult. But this is really important for our stamina sustain, because as you start to get lower and lower throughout the fight, boom, you drop that Dragonknight standard, you gain a bunch of stamina, you're getting 15% more damage. Mountain's Blessing is also extremely important. Generally, if you're playing a DK DPS, you won't have a DK tank in any kind of coordinated group. You are going to be providing this minor brutality buff for the entire group. And this is going to stay up because we are casting Stone Giant at least once every 6 seconds, and this lasts for 20. So this will never go down. It's a very good way to provide it for your group. This, again, when you cast a non-stamina costing Earthen Heart ability, you restore 990 stamina. This is very important for our sustain. We actually overcast Molten Armaments quite a lot because it fits into the rotation very well, and it gives us stamina back. So this ability really helps us with our stamina sustain because of this passive. Two-handed passives, you're going to want all of these. But the most important one is going to be heavy weapons. So on our front bar, we're using a sword. On the back bar, we're using an axe. The axe is going to apply a bleed. And on the front board, the sword is going to increase our damage by 6%. So we have a lot of things that are increasing our damage here. Reduce the stamina cost. Our spammable is going to be a stamina ability. And in execute, you can run low on stamina. This is very important. Follow up. This is not as important. You don't necessarily need this, but heavy attacks is something you will do at certain points in actual content. When you're parsing, you don't necessarily need this. In actual content, I would recommend having it. And for the last one, we have a 30% stamina recovery for 10 seconds after killing a target. Again, for parsing, not necessary. For real content, it doesn't hurt to have it, so you should. Alright, so that's pretty much the most important passives for everything. The only other thing I want to go over is the Undaunted passives. We do want to have these maxed out. They will give us stats. We are only wearing medium armor, so it's just 2%. on the maximum stats, and obviously the recovery from activating a synergy, which if we're getting, you know, combustion or a shards, that is going to be really great for our sustain. So our sustain on this build is very, very strong. We've got a lot of passives working together to give us a lot of stamina. Okay, let's get into the sets that we are using. So currently I am wearing Slimecraw on the monster set. This is good. It gives you critical chance, which the critical chance on this build isn't super high because you know, we're DK and none of our passives really build into crit, unlike, you know, things like a Nightblade where they get a ton of crit just for being a Nightblade. So that's good, and we get Minor Berserk at all times, giving us 5% damage increase. See the theme? We're getting a ton of damage increase from all of our abilities, our sets. Now, I am using Relequens Perfected. This is just the best Stam DPS set for parsing in the game. I will go over some options if you can't get this. And don't worry about it if you can't. It's not absolutely necessary, but for the purposes of parsing on the dummy, which is, you know, what I've been doing, this is the best set. Everyone talks about it. I'm sure you've heard about it before. New Moon Acolyte. This is our stats set. This set is very stat heavy. It gives us a ton of weapon damage. We're running this on the front bar with the jewelry and the weapon, and gives us a ton of stats. That's all you're using for. And then that's all we're using it for, and it does increase the cost of the abilities by 5%, but we have a ton of sustain, as I already went over, so that is perfectly fine. And then on the back bar two-handed, I have the Maelstroms Perfected Battle Axe. This is going to give us some physical penetration, which is great, but the reason that we're using this is dealing damage with critical charge causes enemies to bleed for 13,740 over 5 seconds. So what this will do is critical charge is a dot, so this can be reapplied, the same as our weapon damage enchant. So when we swap to our front bar, this is going to be constantly proccing our damage enchant with the infused, and proccing the critical charge buff, which does a ton of damage over time. This set actually ends up doing more damage than the ability itself throughout the course of a parse. So some other sets that I want to talk about. Alternatives for monster sets, you can also use Selene just fine. You can also use Selene. This is a perfectly good set. It's just a proc instead of flat stats compared to Slimecraw for the monster set. Now, in terms of if you're in an AoE situation, I'm actually going to equip this and show you. In an AoE situation, you can use something more like this with, I've got Veladriths on the monster set, and I've swapped out Relequens for Azure Blight. Now, Azure Blight, when you apply dots, it stacks up and it will explode doing AoE damage. This is great for AoE. Veladriths, when you do damage, you spawn disease spores that will go out and deal AoE damage. So what this does, and I'll show you here, if I have a bunch of grouped up skeletons and I start hitting them with things, see that blue explosion that keeps going off constantly? That's going to deal damage to everyone around, and as we renew our dots, they're going to keep going off. So that is huge for AoE damage, and in certain trash pulls where there's a lot of AoE needed, you can, I would highly recommend using Veladriths and Azure Blight. Now, some alternate options for the sets that we do have that I will go over very quickly. So for monster sets, we've covered Selene's, Slimecraw, Veladress. Now, basically the way I look at it is that when you are putting together a build, or at least for this build, I have, if I switch back to this, Relequens is providing me with a proc and stats. New Moon Acolyte is providing me with pure base stats. So if we look at it that way, we want one set that is providing us with base stats and one set that's providing us with a proc that increases our damage that way. So alternatives to New Moon's, New Moon is a Mastercrafter set, so you may want something easier to get. Hunding's Rage is a very good set statistically that you can use in an alternative. It provides less penetration and weapon damage, but gives you quite a lot of weapon damage and weapon critical. So that's really good. You can also use Briarheart. That gives you a proc for weapon damage, but that's more like a base stat thing. And if you're a little bit lower level and it's hard for you to get high tier crafted sets, or you can't afford Briarheart, Leviathan set provides pure critical, which is really good because it's easy to get and critical is harder to come by when you're at a lower level. So this purely provides you weapon crit chance, which is really good. Especially for a low level person, you can get it in Crypt of Hearts, and that is a very easy dungeon. If you are CP 160, you will have done it before, unless you've literally never run dungeons. If you do any random dungeons, on your grind, you will have done it before. You might even just have some laying around. In terms of proc sets, we've gone over Relequens and Azurblight. Now, Venomous Smite is an overland set that you find in Claymore, and this can be used instead of Azurblight, and it is just as good. It's very good. I use it on my Nightblade. This is a great set. Now, in terms of other proc sets that might be a little bit easier to get, Venomous Smite, you're either going to have to grind for it or buy it. It's not super expensive, but if you want to just grind dungeons, some other possibly good sets are Scavenging Demise. The difference about this one is it will apply minor vulnerability. So if you don't have a warden in your group that is able to apply this easily, this could be a great set to help buff your team up. And Viper's Sting is the fungal... this is found in Depths of Malatar, which is a little bit of a harder dungeon. So if you're finding that challenging, Viper's Sting set, I think, is very underrated. If you're a newbie, get this. It's in Fungal Grotto. You can run Fungal Grotto 1 on normal and get this at CP 160. Upgrade it to purple with a little bit of mats, and it will serve you perfectly fine. For newbies, I would highly recommend that you're just starting to get into this. Slimecraw comes from Wayrest Sewers. You can run Wayrest Sewers 1 on vet, you'll get Slimecraw. Viper's Sting is in Fungal Grotto, and Leviathan is in Crypt of Hearts. Those are 3 super easy dungeons. This will provide you a ton of damage, do just fine. Obviously, you're not going to hit quite the same kind of numbers, but it'll do the trick. Okay, so I'm going to go over, we are using the Shadow Mundus. It's over there. That's going to increase our critical damage. I just wanted to go over that quickly. And for the traits on our weapons and armor, we are using Divines on every single piece of armor to increase our crit damage further. On our jewelry, we have 1 infused with weapon damage enchant, and we have 2 bloodthirsty also with weapon damage enchant. So this is just going to greatly increase our weapon damage. And as I've gone over, we already have a lot of recovery, so we don't need any recovery or cost reduction enchantments. For our main hand front bar, we are using poisons. So I'm using double dot poison. This is crown lethal, but you can craft double dot poison as well. and it's not that expensive, particularly not as expensive, even close, as making potions. You can buy the materials for this and you can look it up. It's damage poison 9 with both dot effects, so the short effect and the longer effect. And then we are using precise on the front bar to increase our critical chance. We did have pretty low crit chance, so I went for precise over Nirnhoned, especially since we do have a lot of weapon damage coming through anyways. And then on the back bar, of course, we're using infused with a weapon damage enchant. So that weapon damage enchant is going to be renewed by our Merciless Charge ability with the ground AoE that it puts down, just the same way that it would be with an Endless Hail on a bow back bar. So that's gonna go really well for us. And then, yeah, that's it for the traits and the enchants. Now I'm using all medium armor as well, as you can see, but you can use one heavy, one light for the better maximum health. And as you can see, my health is a little bit low, so you may want to do that, but test it out in content. Obviously, I'm also using parsing food at the moment, so that health is going to go a little bit up, which I will talk about the food now. So for parsing, I'm using Lava Foot Soup and Sultrus. This gives us a lot of stamina recovery, which is very good. I was trying the Braised Rabbit, but I was finding I would had a little bit of sustain issues. So this is really covering the gap for me. However, you can use Dubious Cameron Throne. It reduces the recovery by just over 100. This is closer to 500, this is closer to 300, but it's, you know, it's like a 175 difference. But you shouldn't have any issues if you run this, and this will give you max health in addition to the stamina, as opposed to just stamina and stamina recovery. For potions, I'm using the Essence of Weapon Power, or Weapon Crit. So basically this gives us stam recovery. It's a stam pot. It gives Major Brutality and Major Savagery. We do have a different source of Major Brutality in the rotation, but sometimes that is going to go down, so this is good. And Major Savagery is a must for any Stam DPS build. You need to have it. You must keep this potion up at all times, and you can buy these from the Battlegrounds vendor, or sorry, from the Cyrodiil vendor. The Alliance Battle Drought will do the trick, or this is from the Crown Store, or you can also craft this or buy it on the Guild Store. For the poison, I already covered. It is the double dot poison, and you can craft that as well. Alright, so I'm going to go over the rotation here. So, like I said earlier, the Stone Giant is the most important ability. I'll go show you on one of these guys. Stone Giant is the most important ability. As I hit this, you can see I'm gaining stacks on the right hand side there. And it renews every time I hit, and it lasts for 6 seconds. So the key to the rotation is that we're hitting this at least once every 6 seconds. So when I start out, I go Molten Armaments and I pop my potion. Then I'm going to go Stone Giant. Then I go Beast Trap, Poison Claw, Flame Breath. So that is the first phase. That's phase 1. So phase 1 is Giant, Trap, Claw, Breath. That applies our long dots. Okay? So the duration on Claw, Breath, and Beast Trap is all 14 seconds or higher. Beast Trap is longer than the other two, but that's okay. We don't have a problem with overcasting that. So then, once you've got that down, you've hit the breath, you swap, you recast, sorry, misclicked, recast Stone Giant. Okay? So then at this point in the rotation, we should have 2 stacks on that. Then you're instantly going to swap again. So you're swapping to the front bar, Stone Giant swap back. Because you need to keep that up. And we're going to apply a few more dots here on the back bar. So what we're going to do is then we have Charge, which is going to start proccing our weapon enchant. And then we're going to go Trap, Swap. I should say Consuming Trap, Swap. And then again, we're going to hit the Stone Giant. Now, we can cast a third ability here. Either Molten Armaments, if our ult isn't up, or we can cast the Standard if it is up. So I'm going to go over that so far. We've got Molten Armaments casted, we pop their potion, and then we go Stone Giant, Beast Trap, Venom Claw, Breath, Swap, Giant, Swap, Charge, Soul Trap, Standard, Swap, Stone Giant. Now we're going to go into our spammables. So every time you're swapping back and forth, you're ending with and starting with a Stone Giant, essentially. Okay? So once you've got to that point, you've casted your Stone Giant again, you're going to do 3 uppercuts. And then recast Stone Giant. You can only fit 3. If you get slowed down a little bit and you think you're a little bit behind, just do 2. It is more important to keep up the Stone Giant than anything. Okay? So once you've done your 3 spammables, you're recasting Stone Giant, and then you're starting over. You're going into the Trap, Claw, Breath, Stone Giant, Charge, Poison, Consuming Trap. Anyways, it looks like this. And then you start over. So I'm going to do it here. I'm going to do a couple rotations without the light attacks, just to avoid some visual clutter, to really show you how it looks. And I'll slow it down a little bit. So I will be losing stacks of Stone Giants. I won't be casting everything on cooldown, but I'll do full speed after this to show you how it really looks like and how smooth it is. Now the great thing about this rotation is that it is static until execute. So if you're on console, or you don't have a lot of fancy stuff, and I really haven't set up my UI at all. I'm just using the basic LUI setup. I haven't omitted anything or avoided anything, and I still find this very easy to do. Okay, so we go Stone Giant, Trap, Claw, Breath, Giant, Charge, Trap, Arm, Giant, swing 3 times, Giant, Trap, Claw, Breath, Giant, swap, Charge, Trap, Arms because our ult isn't up, Giant. Then we swing 3 times, and we just keep doing that. Obviously, when your potion comes up, you're just going to fit it in there. If you get a synergy, you're going to fit it in there, and I'll show you how to do that. So yeah, that is the basic rotation, and you obviously do want to weave your light attacks in there because we're using Relequens. That's very important. Okay, so when you get to 30%, you are going to replace Wrecking Blow with your Execute ability. At 30% HP, you're going to keep exactly the same rotation, but you're going to swap in this ability, and you're going to hit 4 times instead of 3, because it goes off faster. So if you watch, I get a stack, 1, 2, 3, 4, I still recast my Stone Giant with a second to spare, right? The other one is tighter window with only 3 hits. So you're going to be doing the same thing. And there's our execute phase. 2, 3, 4. And then you're just going to keep going with the same rotation. Now when you get below 20%, you're going to make another adjustment. So he's getting pretty low, but I'll go show you on here. So as you get very low, below 20%, you make an adjustment. When you go through your Beast Trap swap, you are going to cast Charge first, then Venom Claw, then Swap. And those are the only two things you're going to keep up. If you have a Dragonknight standard up, you will cast that. You have time because you only cast 2 on the back part. You can always cast at least 3 abilities in between Stone Giant. Okay. But you're going to go like this. Swap back. Stone Giant. Hit 4 cleaves. Sorry, hit 4 executes. Stone Giant again. Hit 4 more. So you're going to an 8 spammable rotation with only 2 dots. Oh, my bad. So you would recast your Stone Giant, put down your Beast Trap to keep the Minor Force, put down your 2 dots. Stone Giant, keep that up, go through to your execute. So I will show you a CMX of about what you can expect. So, with everything that I'm wearing and that current rotation, I got 77k DPS. I know there are higher DPS numbers out there. Obviously though, with this build, we are not doing bow and dual wield. Will you get more with bow and dual wield? Most likely, yes. Do you want to use double two-hander? Could it be fun? Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And is 77k DPS pretty respectable? Also, yes. I don't think that, you're going to be turned away from groups for getting 77k unless they are score pushing or doing extremely difficult vet trials. And, in terms of doing normal content, playing with your friends, running dungeons, this is going to do just fine. You don't have to output a million DPS for basically any of the content in the game. But what I will say is that you must practice this rotation. The biggest difference that it is going to make, you will get way more DPS than people who are using the most meta stuff if you practice more than they do. Now, obviously, high-end groups, everybody practices. That's why they're high-end groups. But if you practice this rotation, you get it down, you will output a lot of damage, and it'll be very respectable for 95% of the content in the game, and you'll be able to hang for the rest of the content, except for score pushing. Do not use this for score pushing. So yeah, I will go over a little bit of this very quickly. As you can see, our execute phase is... Oh, sorry. Gotta load that fight again. Our execute phase is huge. Executioner is our 3rd highest ability. And our light attacks and harmful winds are doing a ton of work. So Relequens, very important. Light attack weaving, very important. Wrecking Blow also up there. The reason we're using Wrecking Blow and not just using Stone Giant as a straight spammable is because of the fact that Wrecking Blow does more damage, and we have a way to fit it in. And as you can see here, the Merciless Charge, this is the Maelstrom weapon proc, and it is doing way more damage than Stampede is. Both the initial hit and the dot that Stampede applies. And in terms of our debuff out time, this is what I want you to look at. 3 times stagger, 94% uptime. That's very easy to keep up. Barbed Trap, 98%, very easy to keep up. Venom Claw, 92. If you make a little bit of mistakes, this is actually a little bit low. This wasn't a perfect parse for me, but this can even go up a bit. And providing some of these debuffs for your team is going to be huge, right? Especially, even DK tanks don't really provide stagger at all, right? So even in a group with a DK tank, this has a lot of value. Now, granted, you know, you can run different weapons and still do the staggering, but I like this rotation, I like the weapons. And 77k DPS, that's pretty good. So I'm just going to show you, not a full parse, but just to end it off, we'll do a short little parse so that you can kind of see what I do, where I pop the potions, how I start out the parse, you know, what I'm doing throughout, so that you can get a little bit more of a clear idea. That and kind of start over there. I made a little mistake. That's okay. And don't expect to get the parses flawless. I've been practicing this for quite a while and I still don't get it perfect, but it's about knowing how to recover. If you need to recover, always come back to the Stone Giant Beast Trap part of the combo. That's the beginning, and you can always start over from there, no matter what the timers are on everything else. I might just do a full parse here, just to show the execute phase. As you can see, we get 2 spammable rotations just about within the standard of might, so that's a pretty good timing anyways. We're going to swap quickly because I missed a little bit of the time there, so we don't want to let our Stone Giant go down. So we skipped Molten Armaments, but that's okay because it didn't even go down. You can't cast your potion as easily after the charge or use synergies, so you're going to want to do those after pretty much any other ability. Standard just came up, but that's okay. We'll use the next rotation. So we're going to skip Armaments and cast Standard. The rotation is pretty smooth. Okay, it's 30%. We're going to start hitting this, but we're going to keep the normal rotation. And we're going to hit 4. And then we're going to do the normal rotation one more time, and we're going to start going into the execute. Now we're going to execute rotation. Messed up a little bit there, but that's okay. Okay, we're going to fit in a standard here. And we're we're gonna push to the end. Straight executes all the way. Man, would you look at that? I actually parsed higher. That was 78k that time. So there you have it, 78k DPS on video parse. Yeah. Well, thank you for watching my video. I'm going to be putting up some more builds like this. I've got some planned out, and they're all going to be stuff that I do for fun, put together, not necessarily because it's the best, the most min-maxed, but it's the most min-maxed version of something that I find fun, like tanking with a two-hander on the back bar, or tanking with double staff, or, you know, obviously doing DPS with double two-hander. I might do some DPS builds with double dual wield, or double bow on a Templar. Just interesting stuff that I find fun. So anyways, thank you for watching. My name is Goblin, once again, and yeah, have a good day.